Hello and welcome back to On-Chain Reaction. I'm your host James Benett, the CEO of Bytetree. So the story this week on and off the chain is really a drop in activity, or let's say a quiet period. So starting here looking at price volatility, we can see that over a 30-day period and then annualized, price volatility is at an almost all-time low of around 30%. Now prior to that little dip that you can see in September, these are unprecedented levels of low volatility for Bitcoin at a time when there is some very serious and big news around Bitcoin going out across the world. We've seen BitMEX being reprimanded by the CFTC. We've seen the FCA banning crypto derivatives in the UK from 2021. And we've even seen John McAfee being arrested in Spain. Now, if you were around in 2017 and before that, you would know that each of these stories would have seen at least a 20% drop in the value of Bitcoin. But instead we're here having the lowest volatility that we've ever had in Bitcoin. It's a fascinating time, and it really indicates that there's a more mature investor presence now here in this market that isn't willing to sell at the first sign of bad news. They're invested in the market, they're invested in the philosophy, and they're invested in the long-term future of this decentralized distributed network. So now moving on to the chain, we're going to have a quick look here at miner activity. So difficulty has hit another all-time high this month, which is very encouraging to see that hash rate or total compute power is increasing on the network, but miners have slightly struggled to keep up this time around. The blue line there horizontally, 10 minutes, shows the baseline of block production time. So when the blue line goes above that, you can see block times are increasing, which means miners aren't able to produce at that steady 10-minute rate. And when we drop below, it means they're ahead of that rate. So what's interesting here, looking at the different peaks and troughs, you can see the peak leads to a drop in difficulty, and then a trough leads to a rise in difficulty again. Peak, trough, and then you get right to where we are now in October. And, there's a pretty steady state, but we are a little bit above that 10-minute per block threshold. So we can expect difficulty to drop in the next period. Okay, so now moving on to transaction value. This is the amount of value that is settled on the network in dollars. And it's a similar story to volatility. We're seeing very sort of steady flow of on-chain activity. And if anything, slightly trending downwards, but really nothing huge to report here. Price is steady, on-chain transaction value is steady, if not slightly trending down. Now back onto miners here, and we can see that miners have been sending out less of those coins that they've newly minted. So recall, what we see historically is that when the market has a firm bid, miners actually sell more of their inventory. And when they're uncertain, or perhaps expecting a turn to the downside, they actually hold back on their inventory. And that's maybe a counterintuitive play, but it's just what we've seen, historically by looking at the last 10 years of data on Bitcoin. So, right now we've seen MRI drop to just a bit below 100%, and we'll keep an eye on this to see how it plays out. But miners a little bit unsure about the next move. So across the board here, we can see that volatility has dropped. We don't have it here on a chart, but velocity has dropped as well. Price is holding pretty steady, and overall, the network is looking healthy. But we're expecting a big move in the next couple of weeks. Which way? Well, you just have to follow Bytetree in order to find out. That's all from me. See you next time.